Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yesterday we talked about the pedagogical operation of arriving at the oneness between the miserable Jiva and the glorious Bhagavan, Ishvara. And in that we talked about how whatever is dispensable, finite, changing, we put on one side. We do not take it into account. Now, what is that is dispensable? What is that is finite? What is that is changing? That also we talked about. It just takes a little awareness to see what is changing. Body changing, mind changing, body finite, senses finite, vrittis changing. Vrittis means thoughts here. Thoughts are constantly changing. Whatever is changing is finite. We saw that. And so now it is important to see what is together, taken together. What is the nature of things that are changing, finite, dispensable, etc. Taken together, you see, it's like this. In this discussion of pot, clay, and then what is changing here? Pot is changing. Today pot, how is it changing? What do you mean pot is changing? Today pot, and if I go like this, tomorrow crackpot. Okay? So already there is a change. So this is what I mean. It is changing. It is subject to breaking, it is subject to cracking, it is subject to nashvara, destruction. So then it is important to have an awareness or an understanding of what is the nature of this pot. The nature of this pot, we say, is finite, is subject to destruction, etc., etc. But can we go so far as to say that pot is therefore non-existent? Yeah? Yeah, it took time, but I'm glad you took the time. I'm glad you really deliberated before you answered. I appreciate it so much. Wonderful. Very nice. No, we cannot say, because what is it that I'm holding in my hand then? Yeah, because if the pot were not, see, there is a poem for you. If the pot were not, then what is it that I'm holding in my hand? If pot is no pot, then what is it that I'm holding in my hand? Because earlier, in the very beginning, we said that there is an objective world. and a subjective world, both of which are expressed in Vakyas, sentences. So, my question is, does the pot belong to the subjective world, an internal world, which means it is there because I see it? Or does the pot belong to the objective world, I see it because it is there? I see it because it is there. Yeah. I see it. Why? Because it is there, I see it. Not that I have a wishful thinking, I want to see a pot in the hand of the Swami and so I'm going to visualize that. No. Why? Because everybody is seeing the same pot. Therefore, it's part of the objective world. So you cannot say it is non-existent except in my own head. No. But then the next question is, what kind of an existence does it enjoy? It enjoys at best an iffy existence. What do you mean by iffy existence? Because when we talk about consciousness, Atma, Brahman, Ishvara, these are all synonyms, okay? When we talk about that, then compared to that, can you say the pot is also existent, consciousness is also existent? No. We have already seen this. How have we seen this? We have seen this because one is Chit, correct? And the other is that which is sustained by Chit, Satchit, Satchidananda. So that same consciousness, the pot is not outside of consciousness. But then, pot is not consciousness. Consciousness, pot is, consciousness is not pot. That's what. Pot is not outside of consciousness, but consciousness is not pot. So you cannot dismiss this as non-existent. Because it is here, we have to reckon with it, we have to hold it carefully. And if it had a human mind, it would already be nervous. I think the Swami is going to drop me, it might be thinking. Thank God it doesn't have a human mind. And if it had a human mind, it would also be feeling a little, happy. I'm not the regular pot, I'm a Vedantic teaching pot. I'm not like the other pots. I have a role, I'm great. I'm a Mahavakya pot. Without me, no Mahavakya is ever unfolded in these halls. I'm a holy pot, sacred pot. All these thoughts can come. If the pot had a human mind, it would undergo all these different, mental modifications, vrittis. But then, you can't have two consciousnesses. There is only consciousness. And the pot is not outside of consciousness. And we have already discussed that the pot is not non-existent. But we still cannot say it is existent. In relation to the pot, we can say, if we take the pot example, pot and clay. So, what is Sat in relation to pot and clay? Clay is Sat. Correct? Because clay is the truth of the pot. Clay is Sat. But where is the clay? You cannot say it is on top of the pot. You cannot say it is underneath the pot. You cannot say it's on the sides of the pot. In fact, the whole pot is nothing but clay. It's clay, clay, clay all the way, right? But what about pot? It's not non-existent, and the word existent has been appropriated by clay. And so therefore, what are we left with? Neither non-existent nor existent. in between, like the sage Trishanku, who, because of a curse, first he was going up to go to heaven. Some interesting karmic profile, I would say. Then some celestial, Indra or somebody cursed him. Or then he was going down. Then somebody else blessed him. Then he was going up, so to speak. And so somewhere hanging in between, just like Trishanku, is this pot. Neither here nor there. So the pot with all its hubris, I am a teaching pot, etc., and its sorrows. I am not as big as ye wala pot. This one not only is big, but appears to have some nice designs on it. I am not as good as this pot. All those complexes, along with the complexes and the hubris, this pot has an iffy existence. What kind of an existence? An existence that is totally, completely, 100% dependent upon clay. Can you separate the clay from the pot? No. If anybody wants to say yes, please come here and try. Leave the pot for me and you keep the clay. Is that possible? No. This is what? So we cannot say it is non-existence. The word for non-existence is tucham. We cannot say it is tucham. We cannot say it is existent. And so somewhere in between we have to devise a new terminology, Mithya. This is the meaning of the word Mithya. Neither Sat nor Asat. Sad asadbhyam anirvachya Mithya. Anirvachyam. Anirvachyam means there is nothing to talk about. It's between Sat and Asat. It's not non-existent. It is not categorically seen something that can be called as existent. Somewhere in between, poor thing, rolling around. And this is what is the status of this pot vis-a-vis clay. Clay is Sat. And then pot is Mithya. So what is this Mithya? Mithya is not an object that you can buy in the market or order online. Amazon.com, Mithya. It's not a thing. It's a reality statement about the nature of a thing. Please understand the difference. Mithya is not a thing in itself, but it is an observation, a reality statement about the nature of the pot, about the kind of reality it enjoys vis-a-vis its source, clay. This is Mithya. And what is the definition of Mithya? One definition we have seen. What is that? Sad asadbhyam anirvachyam. That which cannot be categorically said to be existent on its own without depending upon another source. And that which cannot be dismissed summarily as non-existent. This is the definition of Mithya, one definition. But then, this is a technical definition and this is easy to assimilate. But then the other definition is far more interesting for our purposes. And what is that? Adhishthana ananyat. Ananyat means non-separate from adhishthana, its locus, its truth, its source, its sat. Non-separate from consciousness, non-separate from, let's just work at the level of the pot, non-separate from clay. This is a far more interesting definition. Both are interesting, but this has profound implications for our study of the Mahavakya, of Laghu-Vakya-Vrtti. Why? Because yatra yatra mithya, tatra tatra sat. Wherever you find Mithya, Sat is right there. You don't have to remove the pot in order to see clay. Correct? You don't have to remove the pot in order to see the clay, because wherever there is pot, the direct translation of Sanskrit is where there is pot, there there is clay. Yatra yatra. This is a nice way to put it. And so, we thank the pots for its service and put it aside. And now we come to the question of the whole Jagat. What is it in the whole Jagat that does not depend on Bhagavan? The answer is nothing. Nothing. Everything in the Jagat is Mithya, except the one who is saying everything is Mithya, namely you. Everything is Mithya. Think about it. Mithya is that which is put together. Okay. Put together means what? I mean, nothing. You cannot say anything about anything categorically. Flower. What is flower? Oh, you know, that which looks like this and everything, and sometimes has a fragrance, has color, is colorful, you can say is flower. Rose, we can say. Let's say the rose that we are thinking about is red in color and of a particular size, and has a stem, a few leaves, few thorns, an expression of love in most cultures. Rose. And then, what exactly is the rose? Is this red things rose? No, those are petals. How can you be so silly? Those are petals. That's not the rose. Oh, is the underneath part of it rose? No. That is called rose hips. Roses also have hips. Okay. And then it is apparently very good it's a good herbal remedy. You can make rose hip tea, etc. Very good for certain conditions. And so that's the hips. Oh, then this below thing. No, that's stem. So what's happening inside the petal? No, that's called stamen. Oh, so these leaves. No, you're already calling them leaves. How can they be rose? Ouch. Oh, that's thorn. Okay. So then what is rose? Put it all together and that is called rose. This is Mithya. Okay, put it together. Can you put a rose together? Maybe a silken rose, maybe velvet rose, maybe a rose made of crepe paper, but not Ishvara's rose. So therefore, that which is rose, which is called flower, which is called rose, is Mithya because it is a dependent reality, it is not self-standing. That is what we saw yesterday, that Sat has entered, Ishvara has entered, as it were, the rose to animate it and to make it beautiful, to bless it with existence, etc. Sentience here is knowledge. Sentience is not sentience belonging to the rose, so to speak, but it's sentience because it is knowledge, all knowledge. What is rose other than knowledge of rose? That this is hips, that this is petal, that this is thorn, that this is leaf, that this is stem. This is all knowledge. So the whole Jagat is a manifestation of Ishvara's knowledge, Ishvara which is non-separate from that existence. Knowledge is non-separate from that existence. So Sat is Chit, Chit is Sat, because it is a knowledge that is existent. It is an existence that is all-knowing forever. Well, I was with you up till the word forever. Now I have lost you. If you were to say, put forth the point, the valid point that the rose comes to an end. When? Rose, every day. And the rose comes to an end. If you were to say, you would not be wrong. But that is again seen from the relative standpoint. From the standpoint of the absolute, nothing comes to an end. Rose is. And then what? Rose bud is, rose blooming, rose flower is, bloomed rose flower is, withered rose is, because instead of like this, it slowly becomes like this. Dried rose is. And then what else is? Compost is. Composted rose is. Soil is. Another rose bush is all the way. How is it coming to an end? It's not coming to an end at all. This is what we say, yatra yatra mithya tatra tatra sat. In everything that is quote unquote made by Ishvara, manifest by Ishvara, you can touch Ishvara when you touch the rose. Just like when you go to the beach, touch the wave, you have touched the water. You don't have to take a boat and pat the water somewhere in the middle of the ocean. You are at the shore and the waves kiss your feet and then you have touched the ocean. What are the waves? Mithya. Big wave, small wave, tsunami, breaker, surf, bubbles, foam, everything. Non-separate from that water. Non-separate from the water it is. It's all mithya, mithya, mithya. And what about the ocean? Ocean also, the name called ocean is, and the status called oceanness, mithya. What is the truth of the wave? Water. What is ocean? Water. This is what is the understanding. This is what is Mahavakya. This is what is needed to assimilate. Otherwise what happens is that there is a sense of dissociation that one is in the danger of, going towards. What is that? I want to remove mithya, I want to remove mithya. How are you going to remove? You can't, because of that, because it is all together. You can't remove it, just like you cannot remove chidabhasa from chit. How can you remove it? It is there. When it is together, it is together. So, this leads one, or can lead one, on a path of a kind of a dissociation. Not very useful for Advaita, because wherever there is dissociation, there is Dvaita. And so therefore, to get to assimilate the Mahavakya, we start looking at the whole world as Ishvara. You look at the name and form, appreciate the name and form, and go straight to the content, Ishvara. Ishvara as Satchidananda, Ishvara. So, the task here is in one's drishti to Ishvaraize the entire universe. Is that a word? Yes. Now it is. Then we appreciate Sat all the way. Then you see that there is no need to remove Mithya because it's not causing any problems. It's a vibhuti on that Sat. Vibhuti means glory. It's a glory of that Sat to come in numerous forms and names. We can appreciate the glory when we see that it is all Ishvara. So now, in the text, we are coming to the second tool the second kind of tool that is here. One is, we already discussed quite a bit at length, Pratibimbavada. To understand this, to understand the Mahavakya, to understand Vedanta, Sat, Mithya, difference, all these things. To understand this, we have at our behest these two tools. The first one is Pratibimbavada, the theory of as though reflected consciousness. And what is the second one? Avachedavada, the theory of as though conditioned consciousness. So a little bit about that before we get into the verse. So the theory of as though conditioned consciousness takes a very interesting, it is heavily dependent on understanding the term Upadhi. Upa samipe sthitva, remaining near something, it lends its qualities to another thing. That is what is the technical definition of Upadhi. So, just like we have this stock example, sphatika, crystal, no color at all. And then you put something behind it and suddenly now it is what? A brahmachari. Yeah. It's a brahmachari sphatika, okay? Yeah. So, how did that happen? Is the sphatika has become brahmachari? It is one with the white cloth or white pata cloth. And so therefore, did the crystal become white? No. So what is this white? The white is lending its existence to that which has no name and form. That's what it is. So this is what the whole world is like. With the Sat lending its presence, its blessing, its existence, its sentience, and its limitlessness to all the things that are there. All the things that are there. So white is not an intrinsic property of the crystal. White is an incidental property, so to speak, an incidental attribute to the crystal. Why? Because then the brahmachari took sannyasa, and then we have Spatikananda, Swami Spatikananda here. Meet the newly minted monk. You see the difference now? Yeah. So this is exactly how it works. This is free of name and form, but it lends its presence and existence and takes on the attributes of that which it blesses, including internally, as we are seeing, in the form of vrittis. That's what it is. So that same Ishvara jumps in the gazelle, swims as the fish, flies as the bird, slithers as the snake, and complains as the human being. Same Ishvara. Same thing. This is how to understand this conditioned, as though conditioned. We have to use as though, because as I said, these modalities, both these tools we have their limitations. But that doesn't mean that they are not useful. We cannot throw them away because they are extremely useful to see this and to understand this. Very, very useful. We cannot have it any other way. They point to something. They point to that which is already you, which is self-lit. So that therefore it is understood and assimilated and appreciated immediately. And if we start looking at the metaphors, so many examples will come as we go, the drishtantas, and say, oh, but this is not exactly like that, Brahman is not exactly like this, is not really, how can Brahman be conditioned and how can Brahman be reflected? It is not possible. If we start going there, then it is like, I'm pointing to something, and instead of looking there or going there, you come and catch hold of my finger and then do a PhD on my index finger. That is why it is important to not parse the tools too much. We appreciate their limitations, but then we see how it can be of use to us. And you can see that this Avachedavada is extremely useful. And in fact, we prefer it in a way to the Pratibimbavada, simply because we don't have to then account for two things, Chit and Chidabhasa. Here it is just that same nameless, formless Satchidananda being, quote unquote, as it were, poured into various containers and taking on the shape of the containers, so to speak, without really losing anything from itself. Like even space, when we have 4 walls and a ceiling, it is known, it's got a name. Auditorium. Auditorium space, where we are, is if it had a human mind, it would be very, very proud of itself. Compared to what is next door, closet space. Not good. You are small, I am big. But it's all walls. And those of us who have seen this building come up, we have seen this. First there was space, just space. Then a few big things came along and then leveled it off. We saw that also over the years. Then we saw some pillars, foundation. Then we saw the outer walls and we said, oh, this is a mammoth building, huge. Then we had inner walls carving out, so to speak, certain areas with name, form, and a certain function. So this, as though conditioned consciousness, relies heavily on making the distinction between form and content. So the name and form is there and the content is Satchidananda. This is what we have to see. Okay. So with this, let us look at, which verse are we on? Vanhitapta jalam tapa Yuktam dehasya tapakam Vanhitapta jalam tapa Yuktam dehasya tapakam Chidbhasya dhistadabhasa Yuktanyam bhasayet tatha Chidbhasya dhistadabhasa Yuktanyam bhasayet tatha. This is a nice combo of both the Vadas in one place. So the first one It's a very nice metaphor and an interesting metaphor that is there in the terms of, of heat. So, vanhi taptam jalam. Vanhina taptam jalam. Jalam? Yeah. Taptam? Heated. Past passive participle. So, heated. Okay? So, vanhina taptam, heated by the water. What? Heated by the fire. What? Water. So, the water that is heated by the fire, what happens to it? Tapa, its heat. What is the it here? Does the it qualify? Is the it belonging to the fire or the water here? Very good. It is belonging to the water here. The it is qualifying the water. So its heat, meaning the heat of the water, yuktam, becomes equipped. Becomes equipped. For what? Dehasya tapakam, to burn the body. Very interesting metaphor, very interesting example, and a lovely iteration of this theory of as though conditioned consciousness. So, the water is the Upadhi here, and then it has taken on the heat from what? The fire. The gas stove underneath, or the electric stove, some source of heat will be there. It has drawn the heat from the fire, and then what has it done? It has become scalding hot. Scalding hot. Then, supposing that hot water falls on somebody, then they could have third-degree burns, unfortunately. This is, this is the example. But the water, the nature of the water is hot or cold? Cold. See, shita hisa jalasya prakritihi. The nature of the water is cool. Why? How do we know? You can do an experiment if you want. You can take the water off the stove or from the microwave and keep it there for some time. Especially in this weather, keep it out. And then you will see that it cools down, it does not remain hot. Heat is not the intrinsic property, attribute of the water. Whereas it is an intrinsic property of fire. You cannot have a cold fire. A fire that does not burn is not there. So what now? This is so nice because the fire has lent its heat to the water, and equipped with that, the water has now become empowered to burn just like the fire does. Supposing one gets burnt by the fire and one has to treat the burns, and similarly, if one gets burnt by the scalding hot water, then again those burns have to be treated. No difference at all. This is an interesting metaphor that's also expressed in the Drigdrishya Viveka. Tapta ayaf pindaha. Pinda, ball. Tapta, heated up. What kind of ball? Ayaha. Ayas means iron. So the iron is a metal, and the metal by nature is cool to touch, but you put it in the foundry, a place where you go to smelt the metals. Everything else melts, but the metal smelts. Okay? So, you put this iron ball in the foundry, and then you take it out. That's an even more poignant example than this one. Because the redness belongs to the fire, and then the heat also belongs to the fire. The iron ball is red hot, but that redness and the heat are the property of the fire, are the properties of the fire, not of the ayaf-pinda. This is what it is. So see, the water becomes the upadhi to carry the Satchidananda here, in the form of heat, redness, etc. So the water, etc., or what was the other one? The iron ball become the upadhis for this Satchidananda. That is expressed here in the form of fire. So what are the water, etc., water and iron ball? Various names and forms. Various names and forms. They borrow the sentience and existence from Ishvara, and thereby become equipped. These names and forms become equipped to reveal other things. Very, very nice. And the next line, let us see. Chidbhasya, that which is lit up by consciousness. What is that? Dhihi. Chidbhasya dhihi. The buddhi, the intellect that is lit up by the light of consciousness, we can say, illumined by consciousness. Tad abhasa yukta. So illumined by consciousness. In the same manner, yukta means it is endowed with that abhasa, because it's endowed with that presence of the chit in the form of abhasa. It becomes equipped, anyam bhasayet tatha. It would acquire the capacity to illumine other things. Just as, when you say, I know, I understand, I got it. And then you say, this is pot. You are, in the form of that intellect, you are objectifying the pot. The pot becomes evident to you. You name the pot and you have a description of the pot. You can write a thesis on the pot. All because the intellect, your own intellect, has borrowed that capacity of revelation from Satchidanandam Brahma. It reveals. You see how the second line is Pratibimbavada and the first line is Avachedavada. Very nice combination, very difficult to do. Not easy to express it in one verse. Very, very nice. So, this is something which is, it's a common metaphor, but expressed very uniquely in a way that is part of one's everyday reality. You can easily grasp it and understand. So whenever a thought comes, the thought reveals something in the intellect. I know this when you say, then it is because of the presence of Chit. It is because of the presence of consciousness that the intellect in turn becomes equipped, has the power, has the ability to reveal everything in the external world of names and forms and within one's own internal world of thought forms. now sad, now happy, now alienated, now complaining, now angry, now hungry. So many things about the body, mind, sense complex. It keeps on revealing, keeps on revealing, keeps on revealing. All because of that one source alone. And that one source keeps on revealing differently. When that intellect is blessing, see, the intellect then blesses the eyes to go see, blesses the ears to go get information about that which is the object of hearing. This is expressed very nicely in one of the stanzas of the Dakshinamurti Stotram. Nana chidra ghatodara sthita maha deepa prabha bhaswaram. So you take a lamp and then you upturn a clay pot-like akara form with different holes in it. Sometimes it's in the shape of a star, sometimes moon, sometimes sun, little animals are there, let us say. And then you put that, you cover the lamp in a dark room. This is what people did before they had disco, okay, to entertain the children. So, and the lamp would be on a base that could be made to spin. You spin the base, and then it looks like all this. You have suddenly a new world. And the mother could say to the child, look, dog, look, moon, look, sun, look, star, look at all these things going by. And the child stops crying because it is just such a wonderful show of all kinds of things. And that show is what? How many? You can think that there are so many sources of light, but there is one source of light. Now let us take the same example and visualize that the pot that is covering the lamp has 5 apertures. And then what? Jnanam yasya tu chakshuradi karanadvara bahihi spandate. Why 5? Sense organs are 5. Yeah. So one is that same lamp. Through one aperture goes and illumines something. Maybe a spider building a little web on the far wall, it illumines. And then another stream of light coming from this side illumines a cockroach that is getting ready to hide. And the third one perhaps is illumining something else. So in this way, each one, the eyes, the ear, the sense of touch, taste, smell, all these are blessed by that consciousness. So the eyes become upadhis to that consciousness. The ears become upadhis to that consciousness. Touch, taste, smell, all of them become upadhis, become the so-called containers which actually manifest that knowingness, that beingness, a knowingness that is non-separate from the very being. And they illumine the objects in the world, the vishayas, and bring back information. Sometimes the information, the information is there. The information is needed because that's how action proceeds. So what kind of information they bring back? And like it is roughly of this size. It's got a sharp edge. And it looks like this. It has facets. It is cut to resemble a diamond. It has got a diamond cut. So all this is information, which is brought to the intellect with the help of 2 sense organs, 2 streams of light. What are they? Eyes and touch. Yeah, the light is what is illumining both. So the eyes and the sense of touch here. Sight and touch are objectifying this. And then what happens? Janamiti. There is a cognition that takes place. Janami, I know, I know, I know. I know this crystal. I know this crystal. I know this right now. I know this pot. I know this thought. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. So there is bha, which is the shine. Shine here, you don't think of some light or something. We just say light because it lights up everything, it brings things to light. We have to take it metaphorically. Light here is knowledge. So there is bha, light, knowledge, and everything else. That bha is one, and then there is anubha, that which shines after. That which is a little imitation of a shine. That which shines after, that in keeping with that light, there are so many revelations. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. This is in the Arati mantra also, we have this every morning. And in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita also this truth is reiterated, where Bhagavan gives his address. Lord Krishna gives his address. Natad bhasayate suryaha. And then what? Na shashanko na pavakaha. So, oh Lord, where do you live? I live where the sun does not shine. Oh no. must be some kind of a dark place. Oh, but maybe there is a nice moonlight, it will be pleasant. Moonlight party with Bhagavan. Okay, I'll still come to see you. Na shashankaha, no moon. Oh, maybe we'll have some nice, little lamps, nice ambience. Na pavakaha, no little fire lamps, nothing, no diyas. Little scary in this dark place. And then it's even more frightening. Yadgatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. My abode is that gaining which people don't go back. People don't come back. Very frightening. Until we understand this properly. Natad bhasayate suryaha. We have to take it as where the sun does not light anything up because it does not need to light anything up. The sun itself is lit because of what? Because of that consciousness, because of that presence, because of that knowledge. That is what we are talking about. That Bhagavan's house is already lit by that which is consciousness in the form of Bhagavan. It does not need any other source of light. And that Bhagavan is you in the form of that sentience. If you try to look at the sun, maybe the setting sun is easy to look at. So you're looking at the setting sun or the rising sun. Rising sun examples I don't give because it's kind of alienating. We are not really into that because who wakes up at that time? So, setting sun, safe example. One can relate, Yeah. So, setting sun, we are in safe territory. So, setting sun you look at. Then you say, the eye, that is the sun. The sun is lighting up everything, but the eyes are lighting up the sun. You can't even say the eyes are lighting up the sun. The intellect, the mind is behind the sun to make the eyes go and catch the sun, as an object of one's perception. But then the intellect also is not operating on its own. Correct? Why? Because this light of all lights is objectifying even the sun that lights up everything. So no sun is needed. And so what to talk of fire, what to talk of moon, what to talk of lightning. This is how the whole universe and any other universes that they may be, some parallel universes, etc., anything else that may be, is lit up. This is how it functions. Just amazing. This is mind-boggling. All that is there is one. Morphs into so many things. And then gives you the understanding, yes, I know. Everything. Each time you see something, you say, I know this. And that I know is that all knowledge, Satchidanandam Brahma, that is expressing through a complex mechanism of first lighting up the intellect in the form of Chidabhasa, and then the intellect lighting up the sense organs to go find out what this is about, and then the information being brought back, and then, and then being matched with this, whatever was already there in the intellect. What does that mean? Because if I say pot, various kinds of pots have already come in the mind. Ishta pot, everybody has an Ishta pot, big pot, small pot, silver pot, gold pot, clay pot, all kinds of pots have already occurred. Including the, teaching pots that are here, have already occurred in the mind. And then, but I'm yet to show you the pot. So if I were to show you the pot, surprise, and so if I were, that's why we have many here, okay, yeah. So if I were to show you the pot, then some readjustment is needed, correct? Yeah. Some readjustment is needed because what you saw was this pot commonly used, or what some people saw was this pot, but still it is there, this pot. But then suddenly the mind has to adjust. The perception has to adjust to what is this seen. In order to say, I know the pot, I see the pot, you have to be able to. So the light in the form of consciousness goes and, as it were, metaphorically envelops the pot that is to be seen, and then brings back the information, and that information, readjusts. So you knock off the other pots that have come, and this pot is now lodged in the mind. That's why it is called a recognition. Recognition. Little adjustment was needed. The adjustment happened to include this little kutti pot, this small pot, tiny pot. And then you can say, Janami. Janami. So the cognition is a two-part operation. The first part is what? Where all the information, the messengers in the form of the eyes, ears, etc., go out, as it were. Consciousness behind the eyes, consciousness that blesses the ears, goes out, as it were. And again, it doesn't really go. It's just like that, imagine that, visualize that light streaming through the apertures of the covered pot. So it goes out, as it were, lights up the object that is needed to be lit up, and brings back the information. So lighting up the object that needs to be revealed. This part is called Vritti-Vyapti, because it goes out in the form of a thought. Yes, it is pot, so I know pot. Where is pot? Where is pot? Okay, let me light up the pot. And then when it brings back the information, and there is a confirmation of that, Janami, it is called Phala-Vyapti. Because the phala of the seeing, The fruit of the seeing, of the hearing, of the listening, etc. is brought forth. And then it is matched up with whatever was already going on in the head. Vritti Vyapti and Phala Vyapti. This is how the cognition takes place. And what is behind it all? Consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. Ishvara in the form of the eyes, Ishvara in the form of the ears, Ishvara in the form of the nose, tongue, touch, etc. It's just mind-boggling. Sense organs are Ishvara, non-separate from Ishvara. Seer is Ishvara, the content of the seer is Ishvara. Seen is Ishvara, non-separate from Ishvara. It's all just one. More we'll see in the evening. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.